Hello, sunshine. Welcome to Be Visible with Veronica, the podcast where bold conversations and soul-aligned strategy help you awaken your most powerful self. I'm your host, Veronica Bond. Get ready to stop dimming your light, own your magic, and finally be so visible you can't be ignored. Let's get visible. Hello, sunshine. Welcome to the Be Visible with Veronica podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Bond. Last week, we heard from Kaylee Rogers, the beautiful nonprofit Broken Arrow Wranglers, where she shared her story about horses and humans. Please go back and take a listen after this. But today is a very special day commemorating Father's Day. Stay tuned after a word from our sponsor, Green Living Magazine. A heartfelt thank you to our premier sponsor, Green Living Magazine, Arizona's leading conscious lifestyle publication. Each issue is packed with new ideas on how to use nature's resources for sustainable living tips, inspiring stories, and statewide eco events. Subscribe today and get 12 print issues and digital access at greenlivingmag.com/store. Welcome back. Today is a really important day for me. I've invited my father, Vince Alfaro, who is 80 years old, to come and join us on this podcast on my 5th episode, because I wanted to honor him right before Father's Day, but also I wanted to have a conversation and let you all take a little sneak peek behind the scenes of what it was like for him to raise 2 entrepreneurial daughters. And actually, we just found out today an entrepreneurial granddaughter who became a freelancer in her business. And I'm so proud of her, my Lexi Bond. So, Dad, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
I invited you on because I wanted you to be able to share with the audience what it's been like to raise 2 entrepreneurs who somewhat followed in your footsteps from an educational space, but they also went on their own way. And you had a way of really setting the bar high and even higher every time we thought we crossed over a milestone. And education was really important to you. And you're somebody who put yourself through school, had a family young, and you were an example for so many on how to persevere with fortitude. And I grew up watching you create this beautiful life with you and Mom. And I'm guessing it wasn't always easy raising 2 girls 12 years apart who had different ways of thinking about life. What was one of the things you believed you wanted to instill in your daughters as they were growing up, as we were becoming young women?
Well, with your mom, our dream was to raise kids that were going to be independent. They didn't have to depend on anyone. They would be self-sufficient, educated, have skills that were marketable, have a good family attitude, be loving, good children. So from the beginning, our whole role was it was like the Mayflower. We filled it up with things you would need when you took off on your own course across the ocean of life. We did what we could. It was not always easy. These independent girls were not always easy to deal with. I'm a short-tempered guy sometimes, and it was challenging. And my daughters, you being one of them, right? Very snippy, and they could get after me, and they wouldn't let us get away with an argument without an argument back.
This is true.
So the life plan worked for us. And I'm going to include your brother in there, too, who we lost in October.
Yep.
A 55-year-old man. Very independent, very strong. And I looked through our family. I think we were all that way. My parents were that way, and the way we were brought up.
Education always was super important to you, high on your list. And I think you instilled in me that learners were earners and readers were leaders. And you and Mom still to this day always have a book you're reading, whether it's for personal development or knowledge or just to escape into a great mystery. But you're always sharing with us the wisdom from those books. And I love that you truthfully shared that we were not easy girls to raise, because we definitely always had an argument of our back pocket why we didn't want to do the things that we were always being asked to do. But I also think that helped us stretch and grow and create our voices. And one of the things I've seen over the course of being an entrepreneur myself for 38 years is women have had a hard time finding their voice and using it in a way that was positive and helpful to them. And you created an amazing career in the companies that you worked for. Mom stayed home with us kids, but she was always, there is no but, always educating us, always helping us in whatever we needed, providing the things that we needed to grow, and probably secretly sometimes doing some things without your knowledge, because that's what happens in families sometimes. But I've watched you over the years and how you've supported us. But one of the things I remember as a young girl is you were always there for me, no matter if I was going to a dance competition, a cheer competition, a track meet, choral. I remember it was my choral concert, and Mom was home with Andrea, and you came and you were sitting there all proud in the audience, but you never missed. You never missed a football game, and you don't miss for the grandkids either. And that means a lot to me. And you don't miss now. You come, look at you. You're here in the studio with me celebrating this really fun podcast that I created because Rick planted that seed and said, go be a platform in the world for other women to share their voices and be visible. I'm going to get emotional. And I didn't bring a tissue. So part of that journey for you, Dad, in the workplace, you also worked with a lot of women. And what would you say to a young woman entrepreneur right now who doesn't have the same kind of support that we've had growing up? What kind of advice would you give them? Or a grandchild, or your great-granddaughter, little Charlie, what would you say to her? What would be that legacy you'd want to leave her with as she was going about her own path?
Well, let's take Charlie. She's a little over a year old. I'm going to advise her to be strong in what she believes. Stay to her guns. If she believes in something, don't deviate. Don't bow to the pressure of the masses. People think standing in front of a bullet to protect my daughter or my wife is bravery, which it is. But another kind of bravery is standing up to the masses that think differently than you do. And for those who can do that, can stand and take whatever the onslaught is, I think that's a mark of a person that's going to do something with their lives. I think you got to reach for more than you think you can do. You got to do that all the time. And you got to be able to take risks. As a young gal especially, take risks. Hang out there beyond what they being the man or the organization or the people you're in front of. Some of your biggest adversaries are going to be female. Learn how to handle them with minimal conflict. And I guess based on what my dad used to say, be kind, be prepared, and keep it together.
I love that. One of the things that we always talked about as a family is preparedness creates opportunity. If you don't set yourself up for that opportunity by preparing, you won't recognize it when it comes your way. And I'll never forget when we would have long conversations around the dinner table. One of the things I always picked up from you was, if I wasn't the smartest, I never wanted to be the smartest person in the room. I would create value because I would make the companies I worked for money, and I found a way to do it. And if I didn't have the skill level to do it, I surrounded myself with the people that did. And as entrepreneurs, so many think they have to do it solo.
You're right. You don't make progress, you don't make money, you don't make big change all by yourself. You need a support system, or you need to initiate initiative and others that have the skill, the talent, and maybe your skill is to help grow their motivation so that they know there's something that can be done. And so I look at your network of women. We talked about this yesterday.
We did.
Let's figure out how to multiply them 50 times each to make an impact on our society. Our culture today is in dire needs of change. We've got some things that are going on that the U.S. today is different than it was 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The change can come, the biggest change can come, I think, from women. Because they see it from the point of view of a mom, of a character that's different than a man. They have a different, they're tough but soft. And I think women can reach into the hearts of other people a lot easier than a man can.
Let's just breathe that in for a minute, everybody who's listening or watching. Because that's a legacy right there. And reaching into the hearts of others, going from your head to your heart, coming from a place of consciousness, being able to develop a vision, create some magic around a movement, be magical themselves, lifting others as they climb, so to speak. But you also talk about, and have shared with all of us, and I love that you said this to, you share this with the grandkids, and you used to share it with us. Write down everything you love to do, not because you think it's going to make you money, but because, or create success from a financial space. But it's what you love to do. And don't type it. You said, don't type it on a computer. Write it down. Create that muscle memory. Really let yourself absorb what that feels like. And that's so powerful, because some of the best business coaches out there and mindset coaches tell their clients to do that. And you've been telling us to do that our whole lives. I remember being a little girl writing down what I wanted my husband to look like, where I wanted to go to school, what I wanted to graduate in, the kind of money I wanted to make. And I remember thinking, I just want to make $50,000. And then I did it. And I'm like, okay, I want to make $100,000. And then we did it. And then what would it look like to make $500,000? And then my husband and I did that together. And all the success that we had all came from, what do you love to do?
You know, people, we talked about that yesterday too, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And all of us go for the first level. We have we need our food, we need our sustenance, we need our safety, security. But beyond that, there's a lot of living to do. And right now, I think people are losing the real idea of how to live. You know, I've said for years, I do not like cell phones. I think they're destroying our children. They don't know how to think. They don't know how to communicate. And unfortunately, it's affecting the parents who are the same. It's too easy to go into an area with your phone in your hand and, you know, sitting on a beach with a phone on your hand, and you're on a beach trying to relax, right? And we still do that. So it's a useful tool, but it's taken over our lives. And women who control the kids, who are mostly home or mostly with the kids or more often, and I'm not taking it away from the men that are with their children also, but the women have an influence that that's why they're called mothers. There's just something about a mom that just knows how to contact the inner workings of her brain. The Gen Zers today, you know, they don't have the passion for work. They don't They look back at their parents and they say they worked too hard and they'd end up with nothing. Well, you do end up with something if you work hard. Part of it is working hard and having fun if you're doing the right thing.
Right.
So
I would agree. You know, at Christmas time, you gave us a couple books, and they were impactful stories from Seneca and letters from the Stoics and on the shortness of life. And I always have books here on our podcast set because there's different ones we share. You also talked about big think. How do you get into a room of big think? And some of the best entrepreneurs right now haven't even been born yet, or they're just coming into their own, because you always have said the 20-year-olds, and maybe the age is shifting into 20s to early 30s, but they're the most creative. They have the most time to be able to be in this amazing growth space, but they think that they're just going to go out there and be an influencer, and all these people are going to come around and give the money, and they're going to be able to stay at home, and that's work. That's being an entrepreneur. But I think being an entrepreneur is also find somebody who's doing what you love to do and go be mentored by them. Go learn from them, follow them, watch them. And some of the best philosophers in the world are still correct today. And on The Shortness of Life by Seneca, there's a part in here that talks about we are all given the same 24/7 in a day. Life isn't about living on a timeline. It's actually about living, which goes to what you just said about being on the beach and having your phone with you and not really disconnecting and hearing the ocean and listening to the kids playing and smelling the salt water and getting dirty in the sand and just being. And I do think that in this hustle culture we live in, we're not always just being. And how would you share a point to others that are out there listening right now about living in the moment, being part of a conversation? And I love what you said recently to me is the knee to knee, the eye to eye, how important that still is. And creating space for that to continue. That's not always just online or behind a phone. And as you're here looking back now at great grandbaby, sharing stories and these beautiful nieces and nephews and kids that you see around you, and these two daughters that you've raised that are reinventing themselves constantly, how would you share what you've seen us do that is something you're proud of, that you would like to keep going, or advice from, you have an eagle's eye view, you have that bird's eye view. Somebody out there listening right now who is a woman entrepreneur and saying, that was a really critical piece of information for me when I listened to that podcast today from a father who has been very observant.
Well, I guess, I think you really got to be yourself. You got to find who that is. I really believe you need to learn from others. In one of these books, reading is a big tool. The most successful read constantly. If you can't get a one-on-one with, or even group, or even work in an office, learn from others. And don't be slave to a master. Seneca says that in The Shortness of Life. The most successful emperors, the most powerful people, they say, when I retire, I'm going to enjoy life. In 6 more years, when I retire, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of all my responsibilities. And then time goes by, and they have only a few days left or a few hours left, and they said, where did all the time go? Mm-hmm. That's what the shortness of life is about. I think if I was going to give a tip to anybody out there, read Seneca on the shortness of life.
It's pretty deep.
It's not very long. It's very powerful. And any of these Stoic messages are going to be, you got to. They're not novels that you read through them quickly. You think through every line you read, and you're trying to understand what it says. But
you wrote in here, Dad. It says Seneca's letters on the shortness of life teach all of us to be in every thoughtful moment. Set your priorities carefully and look how to, I don't have my glasses on, look how to look how to live a full life. And this was a conversation you had often with my brother Rick. And part of reading these stories is why I wanted to invite you on here today. And you have two daughters who are doing two very different things, but they're both affecting lives from a health perspective, from a visibility space. And you're our biggest cheerleader, and you also allow us to come in and communicate with you and share. And I love how you keep circling back to your network. You keep talking about who you know. The very first job I ever had was because of somebody you and Mom knew. And tapping into that network of influence around you. How do entrepreneurs these days all around the world, I guess the evil little thing called the phone, they could network there, but how do you think for you learned some of the best lessons in a boardroom or in an office? What was it that you were looking for or that made you thrive in your space? And how do you see your daughters maybe doing the same thing but not in that same corporate space?
I always look to be around people, live things that move. You can see how they breathe. You can see their expressions. You can feel their emotions. You can hear the intonations in their language. You can tell if they're sincere or if they're not sincere. How deep is their knowledge? And I really believe, I said it earlier, you got to learn from somebody else. And what I feel about education, universities aren't necessarily the places where you're going to learn your skill in your trade. I'll bet half the people that go to school don't use and apply what they were taught. But if you do well in school, I think you learn how to learn. That's what I think advanced education does. And the more you learn, you keep learning, so you go to your master's and your PhD and your professional acumen as you develop. And I really think it kind of a little bit of a diversion again, but Seneca said that all of us seem to, because we're talking about being involved with other people, building a network. And I was guilty of it as anyone. You're trying to develop contacts, people, whatever. So you're always saying yes to come to this meeting, yes. Come here, yes. You're invited, yes. Will you do this for me? Yes. And you don't need to do that. Save some of that time for yourself. That's what Seneca's talking about. We waste our time thinking we're doing well, thinking we're advancing ourselves, but we're not.
So
we're taking away from our own time. Like you say, to me, time's like a river. You don't know when you're going to jump in, and you don't know when you're going to jump out. And all of us have a different path on that river.
Yeah.
So the time is there, so how do we use it? And I really believe, another tip, don't say yes to everything.
Wow.
Don't fall trap to everything. Don't succumb to the friends, the powers, your masters, because we all have masters,
Well, I love that you said that, because in the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, you watched me say yes to everything. I was leaving at night going to things. I was going on the weekend. I was traveling everywhere my mentor told me I needed to go. I was jumping in cars and going. And I was learning as I was doing that. But looking back, I remember you saying, do you have to go again? What are you going to learn different this time? What's the impact you're going to make by taking that time away? Is that time better used somewhere else? And I think to have that discernment early, having gates built up around you so that you know, is this a full body yes? Is this a no? Understanding, how would you share with somebody what you saw maybe in your girls do of, we slowly learned how to mature into that space. It wasn't easy, but how do you discern when to say yes and when not to say and when to say no? Because I think no is an answer. That's a famous line with a lot of entrepreneurial women, that no is an answer. So how would you suggest somebody develop? Is it through values? Is it through like a life plan, a game plan, a strategic business plan? How would you decide what's a yes and what's a no?
If what you're going to do doesn't add materially or mentally or physically to what your passion is, then why are you doing it? If you've got a goal, you have an ambition, you have a dream, I've always tried to do something synergistically. I do this because it's going to help this, and that's together going to help that. So I try not to, and even today, I don't put time where it doesn't add value. And maybe that's the right term. If it doesn't add value to what you're trying to accomplish, don't do it.
Wow.
Just don't do it.
Well, Dad, this was a really great episode. I don't know that we could have landed on a better tip for everybody who's listening. And I, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate all of your knowledge, the way you handled our sass and independence for who we are now, but how much you loved us through everything that we did, and the biggest champion for your kids. And I can't wait to go on our trip in a couple weeks to celebrate Rick's birthday, and just you and me and Sis climbing those mountains in Machu Picchu and doing the Amazon. It's going to be really beautiful to dive a little deeper into some of these conversations. And if you want to have my dad back on the show, you guys, drop a comment wherever you're listening or watching, and we will have him back. But I give all of my guests, even my handsome father here, this is called a box of hugs, but it usually says a box full of sunshine, but it's both. So here's your gift, Daddy.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
And sending you a little sunshine, but there's a little something in there for you I want you to take with you, and just know how much I love and appreciate you and all your wisdom you pour into your grandkids, and that you're leaving behind with little Charlie and our future grandbabies, because I'm sure there'll be more. And you'll have lots of opportunity to be a great, again, Poppy the Great, everybody. So if you loved this episode, please give us a comment, heart us, subscribe to this channel, because there's more to come. Next week, we're going to be listening to Marisa Maggio Harrelson as she's sharing what it's been like to earn amazing trips that she takes with her family, what that 12-year journey has looked like for her, and how it has all culminated into being an author in the Six Figure Chicks. Stay tuned for more. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to Be Visible with Veronica. If today's episode sparked something in you, share it, tag me, and pass it on. Your presence has power, and the world is better when you let it be seen. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and keep showing up as the unstoppable force you were born to be. I'll see you next time.